The Hamptons, New York. The Whitmore mansion stood majestically against the blue September sky, its white columns and manicured gardens proclaiming decades of established wealth. Within those immaculate walls, however, simmered a tension that all the money in the world couldn't mask. Victoria Whitmore adjusted her Hermes silk blouse for the third time that morning, her fingers trembling slightly as she checked her appearance in the hall mirror. At 38, she still possessed the icy beauty that had won Richard Whitmore's heart 15 years ago, but now that beauty bore the marks of years of subtle manipulation and calculated humiliation. That morning's argument had crossed all lines. Richard, with his controlled voice and predatory smile, had made it clear that he knew her every move, every phone call, every penny she spent. "You are no longer needed, Victoria," he had whispered, the words sounding like a death sentence disguised as marital conversation. Victoria knew a lot about Richard's shady dealings. She had signed documents without reading them, attended dinners where illicit agreements were sealed with handshakes and fake smiles. Now, that unwitting complicity had become a prison. Richard needed to get rid of her before she became an inconvenient witness. Determined to leave that suffocating house, Victoria grabbed the keys to her white Mercedes and walked toward the garage. She hadn't told anyone where she was going. In fact, she didn't even know herself. She just needed to breathe, think, find a way out of the maze her life had become. What Victoria didn't realize was that upstairs, an 11-year-old girl had witnessed something that would change everything. Maya Johnson was dusting the mahogany banister of the main staircase when she heard Richard's voice coming from the office. It wasn't unusual. Mr. Whitmore always spoke loudly on the phone, as if the volume of his voice was proportional to his power. But something in the tone of that conversation made Maya stop. "Yes, everything is ready for today," Richard said, his voice carrying a coldness that made Maya shiver. The mechanic confirmed it. "There will be no traces. It will look like a terrible accident." Maya held her breath. Mechanic? Accident? Her 11-year-old eyes, already too wise from life's experiences, immediately sensed the danger in those words. "The curve on Highway 27 is perfect," Richard continued. "High speed, failing brakes. Physics will do the rest. Tomorrow I'll be a very sad and very rich widower." The cloth fell from Maya's hands. She knew Highway 27, it was the road Mrs. Whitmore always took to go into town. And failing brakes. Maya had grown up in Queens before her mother got the job at the mansion. She knew cars, she knew mechanics, she knew the sound of danger. Richard was planning to kill his own wife. Maya crept down the stairs, her heart beating so loudly she was sure everyone in the house could hear it. She found her mother, Gloria, in the kitchen, preparing lunch with the quiet efficiency that had characterized her work for 5 years in the Whitmore household. "Mom," Maya whispered, tugging at Gloria's uniform sleeve. "I need to tell you something very important." Gloria Johnson looked at her daughter with that tired expression that came from years of working for people who treated her like furniture. At 34, Gloria had dedicated her life to raising Maya alone, taking jobs in wealthy homes where she was tolerated but never respected. "Maya, this isn't the time for talking. Mrs. Whitmore is nervous today, and I can't give her any reason to complain," Gloria said, without stopping cutting vegetables. "Mom, listen," Maya insisted, her voice carrying an urgency that finally made Gloria look at her. "Mr. Whitmore is going to kill Mrs. Whitmore. Today. I heard him talking about cutting the brakes on the car." Gloria stopped immediately, the knife suspended in midair. She knew her employer's husband well enough to know he was capable of anything. She had seen how he humiliated Victoria, how he controlled every aspect of her life, how his eyes turned cold whenever anyone challenged him. "Are you sure you heard that?" Gloria asked, her voice low and tense. "I'm sure, Mom. He said it would be today, on Highway 27, that it would look like an accident. He said tomorrow he would be a rich widower." Gloria felt a chill run down her spine. She had two options: pretend she knew nothing and keep her job, or risk everything to save a woman who had never given her anything but orders and looks of contempt. That was when they heard the sound of high heels on the marble floor of the entrance hall. Victoria was leaving. "She's going to the car," Maya whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Gloria looked out the kitchen window and saw Victoria walking determinedly toward the garage, the keys jingling in her hand. Upstairs, Richard watched from his office window, a cold smile playing on his lips. "Maya, stay here," Gloria said, but when she turned around, the girl was already gone. Maya ran through the halls of the mansion as she had never run before. She knew every corner of that house, She had spent countless afternoons exploring while her mother worked, always careful not to be seen by the family. Now, for the first time, that knowledge would be useful for something other than hiding. She reached the garage just as Victoria started the Mercedes. The soft sound of the luxury engine echoed in the large space, but to Maya it sounded like a deadly countdown. "Mrs. Whitmore. Stop!" Maya shouted, running toward the car with her arms waving frantically. Victoria, surprised, rolled down the window and looked at the girl with irritation. "What are you doing here? Where's your mother?" "Ma'am, please get out of the car. Your husband cut the brakes. Don't drive." Maya shouted, the words coming out in a desperate torrent. Victoria stared at her for a moment, processing the words. The girl in front of her, the maid's daughter, a child she barely noticed in the house, was standing there, breathless and terrified, talking about her husband and cut brakes. "What nonsense is this? Go back to your mother and stop making up stories," Victoria said, her voice carrying the tone of disdain she always used with the Johnson family. "Ma'am, I swear. I heard him talking on the phone. He said today would be your last day, that you were going to die on Highway 27. Maya insisted, tears beginning to form in her eyes. Victoria hesitated. There was something in the girl's voice, a desperate sincerity that was hard to ignore. And after that morning's argument, after Richard's veiled threats. But before she could answer, the garage door opened and Richard appeared, his suit impeccable and his calculated smile firmly in place. "Honey, what's going on here? Why are you talking to the child?" he asked, his voice soft but his eyes fixed on Maya with an intensity that made the girl recoil. "Richard," Victoria said slowly, "she's saying that the brakes." "The brakes?" Richard repeated, forcing a laugh. What a vivid imagination. Children from these families always make up the most elaborate stories. The way he said "those families" made Victoria shudder. It was the same tone he used when referring to anyone he considered inferior, employees, shopkeepers, anyone who wasn't part of his elite white circle. Maya felt the humiliation burn on her cheeks, but she didn't back away. "I heard you on the phone. You said she was going to die today." Richard approached Maya, his smile becoming more tense. "Young lady, I suggest you go back to the kitchen with your mother before I have to have a serious talk with her about discipline." That was when Gloria appeared, panting from running after her daughter. "Maya, what are you doing? Get back here now." "Gloria," Richard said, his voice now carrying a clear threat, "control your daughter. She's disturbing my wife with ridiculous fantasies." Gloria looked between her terrified daughter and the man who paid her salary. She knew Richard Whitmore well enough to know that he didn't make empty threats. If she supported Maya at that moment, they would both be out on the street before the end of the day. But if Maya was right... "Maya," Gloria said, her voice shaking, "are you sure you heard that?" "I'm sure, Mom. He's going to kill her." Maya screamed, tears now streaming down her face. Victoria looked at the girl, then at Richard, then at Gloria. For the first time in years, she really saw the people who worked in her house. She saw the fear in Gloria's eyes, the desperate courage in Maya's, and something in Richard's expression she had never noticed before, something cold and calculating that went far beyond his usual manipulations. "Richard," she said slowly, "maybe I should stay home today." Richard's smile faltered for just a second, but it was long enough for Victoria to see the mask slip. "Nonsense, dear. You were looking forward to going out. Don't let a child's fantasies ruin your plans." But Victoria had already turned off the engine. The atmosphere in the garage became electrically tense as she removed the key from the ignition. The silence was broken only by the distant sound of a lawnmower in the gardens and the heavy breathing of Maya, who was still leaning against the wall, trembling. Richard kept his smile, but Victoria could see a vein throbbing in his temple, a sign she had learned to recognize over the years. It was the same sign that appeared when a deal didn't go as planned, when someone dared to question him, or when his patience was at its limit. "Victoria, you're being ridiculous," Richard said, his voice still controlled but with a sharp edge. "Are you really letting the musings of a child, like that, affect your judgment?" The way he paused before "like that" didn't go unnoticed by anyone in the garage. Gloria squeezed Maya's hand, pulling her back slightly, but the girl resisted. "Why don't you want her to see the car?" Maya asked suddenly, her voice small but defiant. "If you didn't do anything, why not let someone look at the brakes?" Victoria felt something click in her mind. Maya's question was simple, logical, and Richard was avoiding answering it. Instead, he looked at the girl with a coldness that made Victoria realize she had never really known the man she was married to. "Gloria," Richard said, his voice now carrying complete authority, "take your daughter inside the house. Now. And then come to my office. We need to discuss her inappropriate behavior and the consequences." Gloria paled. Consequences, in Richard Whitmore's language, meant dismissal, and dismissal meant that she and Maya would be out on the street. No references, no savings, no prospects. That was when they heard the sound of tires pulling up to the property. Richard looked out the window and his face visibly tensed. "Who did you call?" he asked Victoria. "No one," Victoria replied, confused. The sound grew closer, and soon they could see a police car pulling into the driveway. Maya felt a mixture of relief and terror, relief because help might be on the way, terror because she didn't know if the police would believe them or Richard. "It must be a mistake," Richard said, but his voice didn't carry his usual confidence. "They're probably looking for someone in the neighborhood." But when the car stopped and two police officers got out, it was clear that it wasn't a mistake. They walked straight to the garage. "Mr. Whitmore?" the taller officer asked. "I'm Detective Martinez. We received an anonymous call about a possible attempted murder at this address." The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria felt as if time had stopped. Richard turned pale, but quickly regained his composure. "There must be some misunderstanding, officer," Richard said, returning to his confident businessman tone. "As you can see, we're all fine here." Detective Martinez looked around the garage, his eyes resting on Maya, who was clearly terrified but trying to look brave, on Gloria, who was holding her daughter's hand tightly, and on Victoria, who appeared to be in shock. "The call mentioned something about sabotage on a vehicle," the detective said. "Specifically, something about the brakes being cut." Victoria felt her heart stop. Someone had called the police. But who? Maya looked at her mother and saw something in her eyes, a determination she had never seen before. Suddenly, she understood. Her mother had found a way to contact the police without Richard knowing. "Officer," Victoria said, her voice shaking, "I'd like you to check my car." Detective Martinez nodded and signaled to his partner, Officer Rodriguez, who began walking toward the white Mercedes. Richard took a step forward, his mask of control beginning to slip noticeably. "Wait a moment," Richard said, his voice still trying to maintain authority. "Do you have a warrant for this? This is private property, and I know my rights." Officer Rodriguez had positioned himself under the car with a flashlight. After a few tense minutes of silence, he emerged with a grave expression. "Detective," he called, "you need to see this." Martinez joined him under the vehicle while Victoria, Maya, Gloria, and Richard waited in deadly silence. The only sound was Richard's heavy breathing and the distant hum of gardeners working in the back of the property. "Mrs. Whitmore," Martinez said when he emerged, "the brakes on this vehicle were deliberately sabotaged. The lines were cut so that they would fail after a few applications." Victoria felt her legs give way. Gloria caught her by the arm, preventing her from falling, while Maya looked at Richard with a mixture of fear and validation. "That's impossible," Richard said, but his voice came out strangled. "Anyone could have done this. We have gardeners, cleaning staff, deliveries, anyone with access to the garage." "Sir," Martinez said, "the person who called us provided very specific information about a phone conversation where you discussed this plan." Richard went pale. That's ridiculous. Who said that? I want to confront my accuser." Maya stepped forward, her tiny figure trembling but determined. "It was me. I heard you." Richard looked at her with a coldness that made Victoria shiver. "No one will believe the word of a—" "Be careful what you say," Martinez interjected, his voice carrying authority. "The girl has already given us specific details about your conversation. Details that match exactly what we found in the vehicle." Gloria took a deep breath and spoke, "Officer, I can also testify. Yesterday a strange man came here, claiming to be a mechanic. Mr. Whitmore paid him in cash." "You're fired." Richard shouted at Gloria, all pretense of composure finally abandoned. "You and your lying daughter get off my property now." "Our property," Victoria corrected, but this time her voice carried a new strength. "And they're not going anywhere." Richard turned to her, disbelief written all over his face. Victoria, you can't believe this. It's them against me. I'm their husband. You're the man who tried to kill me, Victoria replied, her voice growing stronger with every word. And you would have succeeded if it weren't for the courage of an 11-year-old girl. Detective Martinez approached Richard. Sir, I need you to come with us to answer some questions. This is ridiculous. Richard exploded. You're going to arrest a respectable citizen based on the word of a maid and a child? Sir, Martinez said calmly, we have physical evidence of sabotage and multiple witnesses. And we just got a call. We found the mechanic you hired. He's very interested in making a deal. Richard turned pale. What mechanic? I don't know what you're talking about. Tommy Brennan, Rodriguez said, consulting his notes. Extensive criminal record. He was carrying a lot of cash last night, and when we pressed him, he said he was paid to fix a rich lady's car. Victoria watched her husband disintegrate before her eyes. The powerful, controlling man who had dominated her life for 15 years was now sweating, babbling incoherent denials, and desperately looking for loopholes that didn't exist. Martinez cuffed Richard while reading him his rights. Richard Whitmore, you're under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder and conspiracy. As Richard was led toward the police car, he turned one last time to Victoria. You'll regret this, he said, his voice carrying all the malice he could muster. Without me, you're nothing. Nothing. Victoria watched him being put in the back seat of the police car, and for the first time in 15 years, she felt something she had forgotten existed, relief. Maya approached her hesitantly. Mrs. Whitmore? Are you okay? Victoria looked at the girl, the brave child who had risked everything to save her, despite years of contempt and indifference. Maya, she said, her voice breaking, you saved my life. I just did what was right, Maya replied simply. Gloria, who had watched the entire scene in silence, approached. Mrs. Whitmore, I understand if you want us to leave. After all that. Leave. Victoria interrupted. Gloria, Maya just saved my life. Why would you leave? Because Mr. Whitmore fired us. And because we always knew we weren't really welcome here, Gloria said softly. Victoria felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. It was true. In 5 years, she had treated Gloria and Maya like furniture, necessary, but not worthy of real consideration. Gloria, Victoria said, tears welling up in her eyes, I need to apologize to you. To both of you. For years of not seeing you as people. 6 months later, the Whitmore mansion had been transformed beyond recognition. The walls were still the same, the gardens were still immaculate, but the soul of the house had completely changed. Where once there had been the oppressive silence of fear and control, now there was laughter, conversation, and the music of Maya practicing the piano, a piano Victoria had bought especially for her. Victoria was in the kitchen, a place she now frequented daily, making breakfast with Gloria. It was a ritual they had developed together, a silent way of rebuilding not just an employer-employee relationship, but something much deeper, a genuine friendship. The lawyer called yesterday, Victoria said, stirring scrambled eggs in the frying pan. Richard was sentenced to 25 years in prison. First-degree attempted murder, plus conspiracy and fraud. He won't be out anytime soon. Gloria nodded, placing plates on the table. And how are you feeling about that? It was a question Gloria would never have dared ask 6 months ago, but now it came naturally. Victoria had insisted they drop unnecessary formalities. Relieved, Victoria replied honestly. And ashamed that it took me so long to see who he really was. Maya entered the kitchen, already dressed for school, an elite private school that Victoria had insisted on paying for. At first, Gloria had resisted, but Victoria had been adamant. Maya had saved her life, and the least she could do was ensure that the girl had every opportunity she deserved. Good morning, Mrs. Victoria, Maya said, using the name they had agreed on, informal enough to show closeness, but still respectful. Good morning, sweetie. Ready for your presentation today? Victoria asked. Maya nodded nervously. Today was the day she would give a presentation on real-life heroes to her class. She had chosen to talk about her mother, not herself, despite Victoria's protests. Remember, Victoria said, serving breakfast, courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right even when you're afraid. You taught us that. During breakfast, Victoria watched Maya and Gloria interact. The ease between mother and daughter, the unconditional love, the quiet strength that had sustained them through years of hardship. These were qualities Victoria was learning to value and cultivate in her own life. After Maya left for school, Victoria and Gloria sat down to discuss the day's plans. It was another new ritual. Victoria had discovered that she really wanted to know how the house worked, who did what, how they could improve things. "Victoria," Gloria said hesitantly, "can I ask you a personal question?" "Sure," Victoria replied, noticing that Gloria had dropped the misses another small step forward in their journey to becoming equals. "Don't you miss your old social life? The dinners, the events, all those people?" Victoria considered the question carefully. "You know, Gloria, I thought I did. But I realize now that I never really had any friends in that world. I had acquaintances, people who were interested in my money, my position. But real friends." She shook her head. "You and Maya have taught me what real friendship means." Gloria smiled, but Victoria could see that something was still bothering her. "What else is worrying you?" "It's just that, sometimes I feel guilty. For being here, living in this beautiful house, with Maya in the best school. It seems too good to be true." Victoria put down her coffee cup and looked directly at Gloria. "Gloria, you and Maya saved my life. Literally. But more than that, you saved me from an empty existence. Before you, I had money, status, nice things, but I had no purpose. I had no real love. I had no real family." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "This house was like an elegant mausoleum. Beautiful on the outside, dead on the inside. You brought life here. You brought joy, laughter, music. You brought humanity. But we're just—" "Stop," Victoria interrupted gently. "You are extraordinary people. Maya is one of the most courageous and principled children I have ever met. And you raised this incredible girl on your own, working in conditions where you weren't always treated with dignity. That's heroism in its purest form." Gloria felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you for saying that. Sometimes it's hard to believe we really deserve to be here." "Not only do you deserve to be here," Victoria said firmly, "this is your home now. Forever. And I have a proposal to make." Gloria looked at her curiously. "I want you to be my partner," Victoria said. "I'm starting a foundation. The Maya Johnson Foundation, yes, named after her. It will help working families get access to quality education and opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have. I want you to help me run it." Gloria was speechless. "Victoria, I don't know anything about running foundations. But you know about struggle, about overcoming obstacles, about creating opportunities out of nothing. Those are exactly the qualities we need. And we can learn the rest together." That afternoon, when Maya came home from school beaming because her presentation had been a success, she found Victoria and Gloria at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and laptops, planning how to use the Whitmore fortune to create opportunities for other families like theirs. "What are you doing?" Maya asked. "Planning how to change the world," Victoria replied with a smile. "One family at a time." Maya smiled back, climbed onto a chair, and joined them. "Can I help?" Victoria looked at the girl who had saved her life, then at the woman who had become her best friend, and felt a deep gratitude. Richard had tried to destroy her, but he had inadvertently given her the greatest gift of her life, a real family, built not on blood or money, but on courage, loyalty, and love. "Of course you can," Victoria said. "After all, it's your foundation." And as the three of them pored over the plans, the Whitmore mansion echoed with something she had never known before, the sound of a real family working together to make the world a little better. The story that began with an assassination attempt turned into a lesson about courage, redemption, and the transformative power of seeing and valuing the people around us. Maya had saved more than Victoria's life, she had saved her soul. And now together, they were determined to use this second chance to save other families, proving that sometimes heroes come in small, brave, and completely unexpected packages.